wish list would be for the 3.8 billion, the majority of that to be diverted to invest in community sentencing, out of court disposals, resource centres based in the community, for people to be treated and to serve out sentences in the community, and in diversion programmes. 24,500 extra officers are tens of thousands more opportunities to divert people outside of the criminal justice system to get the help and support that they need. So I think that the prison expansion programme, I think, is a mistake. I think that there's absolutely an argument to be made for the current estate to be fit for purpose. But what we're talking about here, the reality is that we're moving towards extra places being made for extra people who are going to then be going into the system, because that's the modelling that the government have done. So my main ask, and also something really simple. I really like the government to state the purpose of prisons as well, in terms of what they're there for and how resettlement and rehabilitation feature as part of the underlying philosophy behind the government's prison reform programme.
I want the Prisons White Paper to adopt many of the recommendations, the over 50 recommendations I made in the award-winning Control, Order, Hope, a Manifesto for Prison Safety and Reform, which places the prison officer centrally in terms of the rehabilitation work that needs to be done, but also is predicated fundamentally on safety first. There is no point talking about all the other hopeful things you want to do in a prison if staff and prisoners do not feel safe in it. Everything else will wither on the vine and die. So restore order and control and safety in prisons. It's not an Orwellian thing. It's actually fundamental to most people's lives, a sense of ontological security, which is completely necessary to then fix the potential that we have in prisons. Related to that, enterprise, enterprise, enterprise. We don't know very much, frankly, about what works to cure people of criminal deviance. One of the things that we do know almost for certain is that sustainable and meaningful work gives people a stake in society. I work with a brilliant charity called Tempus Novo, which is run incidentally by retired prison staff who work with offenders and people who leave prison to get them into stable, meaningful work. And the results are extraordinary. We need to bend everything in prisons towards getting people into stable and meaningful work. And we need to actually also, when we're training people in prisons, pay them the minimum wage, and then have board and lodgings, victim support and savings for release built into that process.
I'd like an impact statement and a kind of set of outcomes against which it's going to be measured, in exactly the same way that charities are expected to deliver a strategic document. And I'd like to see a commitment to social housing and fair rents, to a national living wage that covers actual living costs realistically and avoids people having to use food banks or welfare systems when they are in employment. I'd like to see a national drug strategy. I'd like to see significant challenges to organised crime. I'd like to see a commitment to standards of children's care by government. I'd like to see education policy that takes into account exclusion and expulsion and punishment in schools. And I would like to see attention to detail around institutional racism and misogyny as part of the Prisons White Paper. I think they would be core fundamentals for operating procedures.